David Morrison walked into the Devil's Riders clubhouse on a Thursday night with $50,000 in cash and a single photograph. What he asked 30 bikers to do seemed simple enough: kill my wife. But when these motorcycle riders actually met the woman David wanted dead, they discovered a truth so twisted that it would change 5 lives forever and put a murderer behind bars. David was 42 years old, a successful investment banker who drove a Mercedes and lived in a $1 million house in the suburbs. He didn't look like the kind of man who would walk into a biker bar, but there he stood in his expensive suit, briefcase in hand, asking criminals to commit murder. The president of the Devil's Riders, a man called Axe, listened to David's story with growing interest. "My wife Rachel is destroying my life," David explained. "She's mentally unstable, violent, and dangerous. I've tried everything. Therapy, medication, psychiatric hospitals. Nothing works. She attacks me constantly. Look at these." David showed them photographs of bruises, scratches, and cuts on his arms and chest. "Rachel did this," he said. "She's obsessed with me. She won't let me leave. If I try to divorce her, she threatens to kill herself and frame me for her murder. She has evidence planted, fake journals, fake medical records. If she dies and I'm anywhere near her, I'll go to prison for life. The only way I can be free is if someone else kills her and I have an alibi." Axe studied the photographs carefully. "Your wife did this to you?" "Every single injury," David confirmed. "She's 5'4" and weighs 110 pounds, but when she gets violent, she's like a wild animal. I'm terrified of her." Several bikers exchanged glances. A tiny woman terrorizing a grown man seemed strange, but domestic violence against men was real and often ignored. David continued his pitch. "I'll pay $50,000 cash right now. Another $50,000 after she's dead. I'll be out of town on a business trip with witnesses. You make it look like a robbery gone wrong. Nobody will ever connect you to me." Axe leaned back in his chair. "What's your wife's name?" "Rachel Morrison. She's 38 years old. Where does she live?" David gave them his home address in an exclusive neighborhood. Axe made a decision that surprised David. "We're not taking your money tonight. First, we're going to meet your wife." David's face went pale. "What? Why?" "Because we don't kill people based on one man's story," Axe stated. "If your wife is as dangerous as you say, we'll see it ourselves." David started to protest. "You can't just show up at my house. She'll know something's wrong." "Then invite us," Axe suggested.
"Tell her you're having some business associates over."
"We'll dress nice, act professional. We just want to talk to her." David realized he had no choice. If he refused, they wouldn't help him. "Fine, tomorrow night at 7 p.m., but be careful. She's unpredictable." The next evening, 5 bikers arrived at David's house. They wore dress pants and button-down shirts instead of leather vests. To any neighbor watching, they looked like businessmen visiting for dinner. David answered the door looking nervous. "Come in," he said quietly. "She's in the living room." The bikers entered a house that looked like something from a magazine. Expensive furniture, artwork on the walls, and everything perfectly clean and organized. Then they met Rachel Morrison. She was tiny, maybe 5'3", with shoulder-length brown hair and warm brown eyes. She wore jeans and a sweater and smiled genuinely when she saw guests. "Hi, I'm Rachel," she said, shaking hands with each biker. David said some business associates were coming over. "Can I get you anything to drink?" The bikers watched her carefully. This woman seemed normal, friendly, and completely harmless. Nothing about her screamed dangerous or violent. Axe decided to push a little. "Actually, Mrs. Morrison, we're not business associates. We're friends of someone who's concerned about your husband." Rachel's smile faded. "Concerned about David? What do you mean?" Axe watched David from the corner of his eye. The investment banker had gone pale and was sweating. "Your husband came to us saying he needed help. That you were violent and abusive toward him." Rachel's face showed genuine confusion and hurt. "I'm sorry, what?" "He said I'm violent?" David spoke up quickly. "Rachel, these men wanted to meet you themselves. I told them about your episodes." Rachel turned to face her husband. Her expression changed from confusion to something else. Understanding mixed with sadness. "David, what did you do?" "Nothing," he said, but his voice cracked. Rachel looked at the bikers. "How much did he offer to pay you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Axe decided honesty was the best approach. $50,000 up front. Another $50,000 after you were dead." Rachel closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she looked at David with an expression that wasn't anger. It was disappointment. "This is about the life insurance, isn't it?" David didn't answer. Rachel turned to the bikers. "Gentlemen, my husband isn't afraid of me. He's afraid of losing money. 6 months ago, my father died and left me $3 million in a trust fund. David can't touch it unless I die."
One biker asked the obvious question.
"The bruises and cuts on his arms?" Rachel walked to a drawer and pulled out her phone. "Let me show you something." She pulled up videos, dozens of them. Each video showed David in their bathroom late at night, deliberately cutting himself with a razor blade, scratching his own arms with his fingernails, and even punching himself. The videos were time-stamped over several weeks. "He's been doing this for 2 months," Rachel explained quietly, "setting up evidence that I'm abusive. I installed hidden cameras when I noticed injuries appearing after I went to bed. I knew something was wrong." David tried to run. 2 bikers blocked the door. Rachel wasn't finished. "There's more." She showed them insurance policies David had taken out on her life without her knowledge, $5 million worth. She showed them fake journal entries he'd written in her handwriting, describing violent urges and plans to hurt him. She showed them a bottle of prescription psychiatric medication with her name on it, drugs she'd never been prescribed. David had been building a case for months. The plan was sophisticated: get bikers to kill Rachel while he was out of town. The bikers would think they were helping a domestic violence victim. David would have an alibi. Rachel's death would look like a robbery. David would collect $5 million in life insurance plus $3 million from her trust fund. Axe looked at David with disgust. "You tried to use us as murder weapons." David's lawyer mask finally dropped. "So what? She's nobody. Just a trust fund baby who got lucky. I've worked my entire life for what I have. That money should be mine." "You were going to frame her as mentally ill after murdering her," Axe said quietly. David shrugged. "It would have been perfect. Except we don't kill innocent people," Axe stated. One of the bikers had already called the police. Rachel spoke up. "I knew something was wrong. David changed after my father died. He became obsessed with money, with my inheritance. I've been documenting everything, waiting to have enough evidence. When he mentioned having business associates over, I checked the doorbell camera and saw your motorcycles parked down the street. I knew this was it." She looked at David. "I loved you. We've been married for 12 years. How could you?" David laughed bitterly. "Love doesn't pay for the lifestyle I deserve." The police arrived 10 minutes later. Detective Sarah Chen listened to Rachel's evidence with growing anger. She arrested David Morrison on the spot for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and attempted murder through proxy. David tried to claim the bikers were lying, but Rachel had audio recordings from hidden cameras throughout the house. She had video of David injuring himself. She had copies of the fraudulent insurance policies and forged journal entries. David's own words, recorded on Rachel's phone, sealed his fate. "The money should be mine," he'd said. "She's nobody." At trial, the Devil's Riders testified about David's attempt to hire them. The prosecutor called them unlikely heroes who refused to be manipulated into murder. David's defense argued entrapment, but it didn't work. The evidence was overwhelming. David Morrison was sentenced to 30 years in prison for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, and forgery. Rachel Morrison divorced him immediately and testified at his sentencing hearing. "You tried to make me the villain in a story you wrote," she told David. "You almost succeeded, but the people you tried to use as weapons became my protectors instead." After the trial, Rachel started a foundation to help people escape dangerous marriages. She donated $1 million to organizations helping domestic violence victims, both male and female. She became friends with Axe and several members of the Devil's Riders. They taught her motorcycle maintenance, and she eventually bought her own bike. A year later, Rachel organized a charity ride that raised $200,000 for abuse victims. 50 bikers participated, including the Devil's Riders who had saved her life by refusing to take a murderer's money. David Morrison sits in prison knowing his greed destroyed everything. He'd had a beautiful wife, a successful career, and a good life. But it wasn't enough. He wanted millions more, and he was willing to kill for it. The bikers who walked into that house expecting to meet a dangerous woman instead met a victim who'd been quietly gathering evidence against her would-be killer. What changed everything wasn't meeting Rachel. It was realizing that the real monster had been standing in front of them the whole time, wearing an expensive suit and lying through his teeth. Sometimes the person asking for help is the one you need protection from. Sometimes the victim isn't who you expect. And sometimes a group of bikers refuses blood money and chooses justice instead. That's exactly what happened the night the Devil's Riders met Rachel Morrison and discovered that her husband wasn't escaping abuse. He was planning murder. David had bet that bikers would take his money without asking questions. He lost that bet, his freedom, and everything he'd tried to steal. Justice won, and Rachel Morrison learned that heroes sometimes ride motorcycles and refuse to be anyone's weapon.